Hi, it's Anna Mason, and in this mini class I'm going to show you how I painted this beautiful water lily which is floating on calm, deep water. Let's take a quick look at the process. In this mini class we're going to focus on the flower itself, though the full class for members covers the water and leaves too. I worked from a reference photo I took myself and made my drawing fairly large on a 36 by 51 centimetre paper block. This piece was about relaxing into it and taking all the time it needs. For the drawing, I'd include plenty of detail. Members of Nature Studio get a traceable line drawing they can use to get painting as soon as possible. I began the painting by laying down the lightest tones in the flower, starting in the detailed centre. Using a small brush, I mapped the pale yellow areas first, keeping everything super light and watery so I could build it up gradually. Next, I worked into the warmer orange and brown notes in the centre, still keeping them pale. If an area wasn't dry enough for control, I worked elsewhere and came back once it had dried off a bit. I then mixed a light version of the darkest red-pink and placed it through the centre and into those deepest crevices, making sure the lighter layer underneath was dry enough so that it didn't bleed. From there, I started extending that same colour out into the darkest petal areas, keeping it lighter than it would end up. With that first structure in, I moved on to the lightest tones in the petals, keeping the colour really pale and clean. I held off of the very palest areas so that they stayed as paper for now, and made sure earlier paint had dried off so I could layer without the paint mixing on the paper. I kept mapping the petal colour and direction of markings using stippled brushwork in places so that lighter gaps through to the paler colour stayed visible. This was still that early mapping out stage, getting the main colour placement and texture started, and then I took a break and let it dry off. Next, I worked on the water and leaves, building them up in layers before coming back to deepen the flower. I went back into the darkest areas first, keeping the darks controlled and in the right places so that they didn't spread too far. It was now easier to see how much darker to take those dark areas because I painted the water and the leaves. I used a small brush and worked with textured marks so that the shadows didn't look flat. As sections dried, I wasn't afraid to add another layer where it clearly needed to be darker. This was now a lot easier to identify with the water and leaves darker because of the way that we perceive the tone or value of a colour in relationship to the tones around it. I also watched how the colour dried. If it looked too dark or too light, I left it to dry off so that I could judge it properly. I adjusted the hue slightly where it needed it and extended the darker notes out through the petal texture, staying faithful to the mottled, streaky look in the reference. I moved into the next darkest tones, then started working into the mid-tones with a paler, watery mix. I kept it vibrant and built that texture as I went, holding off anywhere that needed to stay lighter. I continued building the mid-tones, stepping back to spot where the form needed more depth. As areas dried off, I started darkening selectively again, then made a round of tonal adjustments, ready to move into the centre detail next. This was the stage where the flower really started to bloom on the paper, the 3D form appearing as I developed the darks and mids some more. I focused on the centre next with a tiny brush for precision, beginning with the darkest shapes to the structure so that it was clear. I kept in mind that it would dry a little lighter. Next, I built the next darkest warm tones through the centre, letting the lighter layer underneath show through in places so it stayed luminous to create shape. I then worked into the mid-tones, especially in the lighter areas, keeping them bright and adjusting small sections so that the glow of the centre started to look right compared to the reference. I went back round to check I hadn't missed anything, strengthening vibrancy and depth with further layers where I needed them, making sure the paper underneath was dry each time, and adding a few tiny line details that helped realism. With the centre stronger, I returned to the very darkest notes again for a few key accents, then did a small amount of extra darkening in the flower where it needed it. I made a subtle hue shift in parts of the petals to keep them vibrant without taking them too dark, and I left plenty of lighter sections. I then let it dry off and took a break before the final bringing it all together stage. Next, I worked on the water and leaves in layers to build depth and realism, and the full-length class shows those stages step by step, including exactly how I painted the water and those leaves. Before darkening, I lifted a little colour from a few petals with kitchen paper to bring back some really light flecks through the texture. I switched to a smaller brush to crispen edges for more realism, and I added petal detail using stippling so that it stayed looking natural. I made subtle hue and tone tweaks with watery mixes, building them in layers and letting them dry off so that I could see what was really changing. The final stage took time, lots of tiny adjustments adding up. I was comparing the painting to the reference and looked for what needed refining. I worked my way around the flower, neatening edges and adding tiny wrinkles and veins where they helped form. For the finest centre work, I went back to a very small brush for maximum control. Once the flower felt right, I checked that it was popping enough overall by stepping right back. Where needed, I spent time in the zone, relaxing into the process and making broader tonal adjustments elsewhere so that the flower looked in balance with its surroundings. Then I stepped back again to reassess contrast levels and make those final tweaks. I stuck with it, took breaks when I needed fresh eyes, and finished when the contrast and realism felt balanced and the flower looked properly 3D and popping off the paper. You can find the long format step-by-step video class of this water lily in my online art school Nature Studio. Here's a look at the results members have been achieving with the full class. If you've enjoyed watching, please subscribe to this, my YouTube channel, and then be sure to pop over to naturestudio.com where you can find a free class plus a whole heap of other free resources to help you capture the beauty of nature on your paper. Here's a little peek at what's waiting for you. Have you taken my free full-length watercolour class yet? If not, you're in for a treat. In it, I guide you step by step through painting a juicy, realistic pear that'll make you think, wow, I did that. You'll learn a repeatable, reliable watercolour method that you can go on to use for painting all kinds of other subjects. I'm confident you'll discover something that I already know, that you're a better artist than you think. I teach everything about my watercolour method in this full-length class, and I'm sharing it with you for free because I want to show you what you can achieve with the right instruction. If it ignites a spark in you, just as it has for thousands of others who've taken this class, there are hundreds more detailed tutorials you can unlock if you choose to become a Nature Studio member. So get the free class now and get ready to wow yourself with your results.